I wish I could say that I was as in love with the second season of The Tourist as I was with the first. Sadly, I cannot. And I hate this, you guys. I hate it. Let me just say up front that that's not to say that the second season was horrible, because there was plenty about it that I did enjoy, but it was like the magic just wasn't there anymore. It was like that lightning in the bottle that they had captured for season 1, and they were trying to recapture it for the second season, and it felt too forced, and consequently it didn't work. It didn't flow as naturally as the first season did. The writing didn't feel as solid as the first season did, and because of that, the second season was fundamentally a disappointment compared to the first. So I'll recap a little bit. The Tourist is a Netflix show. Well, it had started off on the BBC, then it went to HBO here in the States, and now it's coming to Netflix. Season 2 has recently aired on the BBC beginning of January, I believe, and it's coming to Netflix February 29th, which is when the review embargo for this lifts. So this video, though I'm filming this like February 3rd, it's not going to go up until the 29th. As a recap, The Tourist is about a character played by Jamie Dornan, who the story starts, well, the first season was in Australia. He was in an accident, he lost his memory, and the whole season he's trying to figure out what's going on, why are people going after him, why can't he remember his past, stuff like that. A very common sort of vehicle for storytelling. And I'm fine with that. I don't mind that we're getting something that we've seen before, but what really made season 1 stand out was just how they put it together. The building blocks were constructed together so well that it felt like something fresh. It was witty, the writing was good, there was some comedy in it, and so I just loved season 1. Loved it. Season 2, he still has lost his memory. He pretty much never... there are fragments that he can recall, or sensations or whatever, but he really just does not remember stuff. So season 2, he and Helen, who now they're a couple, they end up in Ireland, and he comes into contact with members of his family, or a member of his family, and through that he finds out different pieces of his past that he had no knowledge of. And of course, as with the first season, as more is revealed, Elliot, that's the name he started going by in the first season, Elliot finds out terrible things about his character. This causes friction between him and Helen, which that's another thing that's an issue with me about the writing in this. So he also gets caught up in family dispute stuff going on, and I'm not going to give away too much of the plot. Just that's the basics of what's happening. One of the things that I did like is that, as with the first season, it starts off pretty quickly. He and Helen are traveling around. They decide to go to Ireland, and then something happens pretty much immediately after they get to Ireland. So it does hit the ground running like the first one did. So that's a pro. Something else that I liked about this was there is an actress who plays in here. When she showed up, she has a shock of very white hair. I recognized her. I thought I recognized her. I was thinking, that looks like the woman who played in Cult Killer. So of course I looked her up, and yes, it's her. She was much better in this than she was in Cult Killer, and that's largely because the writing in here, despite my complaints about it, it is a bit more solid than what we got in Cult Killer. I really like this actress, actually. I can't remember her name now. She's some Irish actress, but I felt like she was a great fit for the role that she played in here. And you'll know what I mean when you see it. I don't want to say too much about her character, give away too much, but she's a very prominent figure in this season. I'm going to proceed now to slide into the cons of this. please bear in mind that the things I say are born out of extreme frustration due to the fact that I was so impressed with season 1 and had an expectation that season 2 was going to match the level of season 1. And because it didn't, I'm a little aggravated about that. There's some issues with some of the situations that arise. In the very beginning, there's an event that happens with someone in a bathroom and some people come in. And then all of a sudden there's this supposedly surprise attack. And I'm thinking to myself, you didn't hear the door open and the footsteps shuffle behind you? That was a problem because there's no way that could have happened. That was in the very first episode. And I was thinking, and I wrote it down. And it would have been fine if those sort of little minor things had been the only problem. But that was just the start of it. Then there's a scene where a character is being chased by a vehicle. There's woods all around. The character does not proceed to just dart off into the woods to get away from the vehicle. Oh no, they just run right straight down the path in front of the vehicle that's chasing them. What? Run into the woods, like not in a straight line. Okay, this was also the first episode. That was another thing. And as the story goes on, not only were there some issues like that got under my skin, there were plot conveniences that was just a little bit too much. It started to add up. For instance, there's 2 characters that magically end up on the plane at the very same time, going to the very same place. I mean, the chances of that, they kind of try to explain it away, but still, the chances of that. And also, there's a situation where police are involved. There's this thing that's happened. So an investigation is underway. Police are involved. Helen used to be a police officer or constable, but she's not anymore. And yet she's able to insert herself into this stuff going on with the police, and they hand over information. This is a touch spoilery, but not huge spoilery as far as the plot. So please bear with me. So they hand her information. She's a civilian. Why would the police be handing her this information where she's going to see something that's very timely and appropriate to the plot? These conveniences, that's not... This is when I start to notice, they're trying too hard. They're trying to go bigger and better than season 1. And so they're putting in all this stuff that doesn't make logical sense, that just is not realistic. So obviously a lot of fiction, yes, there's going to be some things that wouldn't necessarily be 100% realistic, but you do want them to at least try for some semblance of realism. That was not, I couldn't buy into that. I guess you could say, well, since she used to be a cop, okay, they would give her this concession, but still. And then there's another character that shows up that Helen has interactions with. And there's some stuff that goes on with this character that is just way too over the top and ridiculous. And just like too much. It was just... This plot stuff that was added in about this character that Helen has interactions with, it felt so inane and over the top. It was like the writers were just trying to be, as I've said before, they were just trying to make it so much bigger than the first season. But the plot stuff going on with this other character, I just couldn't. If they had just stripped all of that out, they probably could have shaved an entire episode or more from this series. Not that I necessarily wanted less episodes. There were 6 episodes just like in the first one, but this whole thing going on with that person, totally unnecessary. I mean, no. And then there's another instance. These are just writing issues. It's primarily writing issues. There weren't too many problems as far as the acting. That was not a disappointment or anything like that. Helen's mannerisms and stuff are kind of starting to... I really loved her character in season 1, but as of season 2, the way she carries herself, her mannerisms, the way she speaks, it's a little bit... It feels repetitive at this point. Yeah, obviously it's going to be repetitive. It's the same character, but maybe you'll know what I mean when you see it. Like these little ways that she has of communicating. That's minor compared to all this other stuff. But anyway, what I was starting to say was there is another character who breaks their leg, but about a day or 2 later, they're walking like normal, like nothing ever happened. Did the writers forget this character had broken their leg? What? something that I was starting to say that I completely forgot to mention. I'll go ahead and mention it now. It was about Helen, and some of her interactions with Elliot felt a little bit repetitive. Also, it felt confusing the way her character seemed to be having issues with him and his past when that seemed to have been something that appeared to be resolved between them at the end of the first season. And okay, let's say it wasn't. Having it be sort of an issue in the second season would be one thing, but some of the interactions between them about it felt like, okay, you've already hammered this point home. Why are you bringing it up again? It just felt like they were going over it a bit too much. Repetitive. I think I used that word already. So that became an issue as well. It's just like, okay, they're just dragging things out. You could have shaved off a bit of an episode here by eliminating these continued interactions with them about this situation. Maybe you'll know what I mean whenever you get around to watching this. If you get around to watching this. Okay, back to the video. And then in the very last episode, there were some things that were happening as the plot is moving along and things are coming up to the climax is building. Some stuff felt way too rushed. It didn't feel genuine and authentic with the way things were being figured out and pieced together just to come in at this absolutely perfect time. This is a plot device that happens a lot. Sometimes it works just fine, but other times it feels like that's just, of course. Just the over-the-top stuff with some of the writing, the plot conveniences that just really stretch the limit of my ability to suspend disbelief. And not like John Wicky style, but maybe you'll know what I'm talking about when you see it. The very end of the season leaves it a bit up in the air as to the potential for a season 3. Nothing has been confirmed yet, but I could see it being picked up unless season 2 completely bombs with audiences. I don't know. I'm not saying, despite all of these cons that I have, and the con list does far outweigh the pro list, which is like this, and here's the con list. And these were mostly these writing problems that I had with stuff that the characters were doing. But despite me saying all this, would I be willing to watch a season 3? Absolutely. I still do enjoy the characters, and I enjoy some of the comedy that's inserted in there. There is a character from the first season that I wasn't crazy about at all, but this character grows on me a little bit more in season 2, despite the fact that it does feel like the insertion of this character was kind of unnecessary and we just put in there for this, just some plot conveniences and whatever. I'm hampering myself by leaving out details, but I wouldn't necessarily mind a third season. I just hope that if one does come around, that they will clean up those issues that were quite prevalent in the second season and give us something that's about as solid as, or as close as possible to how solid season 1 was. I was really excited going into this, and I think the problem was that season 1 was so perfect. It was just going to be really hard to recapture this for the second season. Unfortunately, this season went the way a lot of subsequent seasons go in shows that start off really good. But I'm hoping that if it continues, those problems will be sorted. We'll find out, won't we? So if you guys end up watching season 2, I would really like to hear feedback from you on these things that I'm referring to. I did check out a review of season 2. There's maybe about only one other review, and this is probably from someone that saw it on the BBC, so they're not necessarily bound by a review embargo sort of thing like what I am with Netflix. But I didn't watch the entire review, but I could tell by the tone of the review and the comments that there's a similar sort of feeling of disappointment or not as much appreciation for season 2 as there had been for season 1. So I'm having a feeling it's not just me on this. Not that I necessarily care whether other people feel the same way about what I do, but there are times where I do appreciate seeing that there's others that are in tune with noticing certain things that sometimes I wonder, am I the only one that's picking up on these problems? But if you guys don't pick up on them, let me know, and let me know why. Some people can see certain issues in writing, but sometimes it just doesn't bother them. And sometimes I will see issues with writing too, and it doesn't bother me, but it's when these things build to a certain level that it does start to be more than I can ignore or brush off. And that happened with this, unfortunately. I'm not going to keep ranting on and on about this, but I did want to film a review for it, and I didn't want to wait too long after having finished watching it before I did so. Okay, I don't have anything else. I'm wrapping this up, you guys. Later.